Hey guys, I want to talk to you today about Final Fantasy. And I'm what you might call a Final Fantasy fanboy. Not something I'm particularly proud of, but it is what it is. And I've always thought, about the question, what's your favorite game ever? And it's always been a very tricky question. It's like, how could you possibly choose a game out of all the magnificent games out there? But when I think about it, and I had to be like stuck on a desert island with like some kind of franchise, right? I think I would have to say Final Fantasy. And today I'll tell you why. Now, the first game that came out is obviously Final Fantasy on the NES. And this came out in '87, I believe. 87. And I think it came out maybe a little later here than in Japan. But when we did get this game, I had been used to playing kind of games on my parents' computer, role-playing games. And, they're more kind of like the Dungeons and Dragons type, kind of more text adventure, and they weren't really well made, to be honest. Like back then, in the early 80s, no one really knew what they were doing well. So, I mean, you had some like really cool concepts on the Atari computer, I remember. But when they were actually put into practice, they just didn't work very well. I remember this one game, like, it seemed like really involved. You could go around adventuring and you could put your money in banks and go to weapon shops and like get stuff on loan. And the only problem was that you couldn't walk 5 steps without just being murdered by a monster. It was just completely unbalanced. So this was actually like the first role-playing game that I played as a kid that I really liked. And it wasn't so much that the game was complicated. I mean, it's a very simple game, actually. You got 4 characters that you just pick right away from, and there's not very much story. You're basically hired by the king to go take care of some monsters in the beginning, I think. I don't remember exactly, but just something about it. Something about Final Fantasy just kind of had that magic, There's like catchy tunes that it has with it, and even though the graphics were simple, they were pretty good for the time. They compared with Dragon Warrior and the other NES role-playing games. NES role-playing games were really pretty pathetic when you think about it. But for the time, that's what we had. And I remember I got this game used actually at a store called Matt's Game Exchange we had in the Bay Area. And they just bought and sold used games, kind of like, I guess, GameStop does now. And it's not a very nice copy. You can see the the box on the bottom's being held together with tape, and there's no manual or anything. No styrofoam in there, but I got my original copy still, and I've hung on to it ever since. Now, this game tied me over for a while, and it wasn't actually until Final Fantasy II came out on the Super Nintendo that I really, really started to notice, like, wow, this is going to be a good franchise. And you could tell immediately when I started playing it that the music was just way better, the graphics were way better. The Super Nintendo really brought out what a Final Fantasy game could be. Because, for you guys that are in the know, they kept making Final Fantasy games in Japan until this one. This one's actually the 4th game they made. But we didn't get the 2 and 3 here in the US. We just got this one right after the first one. So they just branded it as Final Fantasy II. And the difference between the two are just night and day. I mean, this one was the first one that I played that had just like, an epic story, like orchestral music, much better graphics than I think anything really that I saw at the time. This game came out in like '91, I think. So, I mean, it was really fairly recently after Americans got to see this one. And yeah, like I said, I could really tell that this game they put so much work into making it. You know, the story was just epic. The characters, they had actual like character development in the game where your characters are, you know, meeting up with each other and all their silly foibles and stuff getting exposed. And actually, I think this is one of the games where like some characters died in it. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I've never seen characters die in a role-playing game before like that. So anyways, I'll keep it short with this one, but not too long after this one came Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo. And, you know, these games I never had as a kid, actually. I just kind of had to borrow them from my friends at the time because they were kind of pricey back then. And I didn't have like a whole lot of money to get games. I was buying like Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana. And after that, I was just wiped out, so I had to borrow these. But I actually bought these later in life just because I remember such the amazing time I had with them, especially this one. This game, I mean, Final Fantasy II was pretty memorable, but this one it blew everything out of the park at the time. I don't know, it's just, this one seemed to kind of get like a cinematic feel to it almost. You know, just the production of it was, I don't know, it's just like nothing that I'd ever seen at the time. You know, and you still kind of got the same theme going. You've got like all the different characters that meet up with each other, and you put them in your groups, and you're gaining levels and exploring the world. And this is something I got to tell you, actually. Every Final Fantasy game kind of has the same premise. Like, you and your party has to go save the world, right? And not only that, but they kind of incorporate like the same type of music throughout the games too. Not the same type, but actually the same songs. So like, you can hear a song in Final Fantasy II, and they'll kind of make a very similar song to it to put in this game, Final Fantasy III, or Final Fantasy VI or VII, and so on. And that's something that's kind of special about Final Fantasy games, is you can just recognize things, and it kind of brings you back to like the earlier titles. And there's other themes like, you know, you're always regaining your hit points by resting in a tent, say, and you'll go in your tent and they'll play the little resting music, and it's very similar throughout each game. So even back then, like going from 2 to 3, there was almost like a little nostalgia factor in going between those two games. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But so this game was amazing, and actually this game is still one of the, I mean, some people swear it's like one of the best role-playing games they've ever played. And I would have to agree, it's pretty epic. And just the music and everything is just very memorable. That's something about Final Fantasy games that really stand out to me. They're just all very memorable. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I like playing, you know, games where you're driving or going and shooting stuff. But like my favorite type of game, I think, is something that's just got a lot of heart in it. And, you know, it's got that story, and just, it makes you like emotionally invested, I guess. And even with these old clunky kind of looking Super Nintendo games, they were able to do that. They were able to get a player emotionally invested in the characters and the story, and you actually cared like what was going to happen. Which wasn't, you know, it might seem kind of silly to say now, but back then it was kind of a new thing. And that brings me to probably one of my favorite Final Fantasy games, if not my favorite completely, and I'll tell you why. This game came out, I'm not sure if it was like right when the PlayStation came out, but what I remember, I didn't have a PlayStation for a while after it came out. Or, you know, not a while, but I didn't get it like day one. It wasn't until this game came out where I was like, damn, I need to get a PlayStation. Because, you know, I'd already been a Final Fantasy fan, and back at the time, they were just hyping the hell out of this game in the, you know, game magazines and maybe even on TV too. It was a while ago, so I don't remember, but this was the game where the Squaresoft just really marketed the hell out of it. And it was actually, this Final Fantasy III game is the last one they made before this one. Even though this one's called 7, this one is called 3 to us. But in Japan, this was actually the 6th one they made. We just never got the other ones that came out here until later when they translated them and put them on other systems. But this game was the first 3D Final Fantasy, and they went to town making this one. I think they just had a huge budget, and it is not 1, but 3 different discs. And the game is just massive, and the story they constructed, and the characters, just everything, they just hit it so perfectly. I don't know, it had a really strange story, one like I've never seen ever before, actually. And it was kind of told throughout the game as another one of these games where you're kind of like playing through as this character, and you don't really know his background, and you're kind of figuring out more and more about him as you continue through the game. And then there's all these other characters that come in, and you know, the story just works itself out, and there's always like something crazy happening, like something you'd never even think of. And it's like, what is going on in this game, right? And you know, this just really hit on all cylinders, even though like the graphics look crappy now. At playing this for the first time on the PlayStation, you know, coming from the Super Nintendo, I was just blown away. I was like, you know, hearing that CD sound for the first time, and I'm seeing like the pre-rendered backgrounds in a game for the first time. I was just like, wow, this game is amazing. And even though the character models themselves are very simple, very, very simple, you know, they probably had, you know, less than like 30 polygons on the whole character model. But I think they had to do that just because, you know, they had to cram this whole game on 3 CDs. And the animations throughout the game, and I've never seen anything like it. They're animating all these 3D characters going through the little story and acting out all the little scenes. And the music, they got, you know, like symphony quality scores throughout the game to just really get the player invested and involved in all the aspects of what's happening in the game. Like as you're going through the story, you know, something bad happens to like a character, say, and you know, if you don't have the music, you're just looking at a silly little rendered character. You're like, you know, it looks like a Lego. I don't care. But just like you know, what they were able to do with just dialogue and music really got a player involved. And I think that's really the secret to why this game sold like over 10 million copies. I mean, they made so much money with this game. It was ridiculous for the time. And that kind of brings me to what I want to talk about today. I mean, they made like tons and tons of Final Fantasy games after this, of course. But these are like my earliest memories of Final Fantasy, and I'd say these titles really made me like Final Fantasy, but this title really made me love Final Fantasy. And you know, that's not even to say that all the games are related. I mean, I think in every game there's like, maybe even, it might even take place on a different world. but you always kind of know what you're getting into when you get a Final Fantasy game. You know you're going to get like the top-notch graphics of the day. You know you're going to get top quality music that the people really just put their heart and soul in. You know you're going to get a great story. And I mean, I can't speak for every single Final Fantasy game. I mean, at this point, it's like a huge franchise, and they made some that were bummers too. That, I mean, I haven't even played a lot of them that just look like, I don't know what they're doing with that. But like all the main Final Fantasies, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all of them have been just excellent in my opinion. Even some of them I had trouble getting into at first, like Final Fantasy 13. I did not like it at first, and then I came back to it like a year later. I'm like, damn, this is pretty good. I love it. You know, it's just a weird franchise like that for me. But anyways, apparently it's been a really top-notch franchise for a lot of other people too, because I remember years and years ago, people were clamoring, Squaresoft, please make a Final Fantasy VII remake, because you know this came out in '97 and. Since then, we've had all kinds of, you know, technical improvements. I mean, even if they had made this on the PS2, I think people would have been really stoked to see like the upgrades they could have done with it. And it's just never happened until actually fairly recently, when Squaresoft, or I guess Square Enix now, they finally said, okay, we're gonna do this, and they made a Final Fantasy VII Remake, as all you gamers I'm sure know about this. I think it's been out like a month at least, but yeah, I was a little nervous actually when they announced this. Like, I think they announced that they were actually going to make it like maybe 2 years ago, so it's been a while. But I remember like back in the day, everyone saying, "Man, it would be great if you know, if they just made another Final Fantasy VII game and just remade it." And I think people have been pestering them for years to do this. So they actually did a good job on it. I was scared they were going to screw it up, to be honest. Like, especially with this, like, all the politics getting into games and now stuff. I was worried they're going to like put Tifa in a burqa or something, you know. I guess a lot of other people were worried about it too, because that's been one of the topics on the fan conversation. Is like, oh man, I hope they don't mess up Tifa. But I got to tell you, Tifa looks good, Aerith looks good, and oh, let me show you a little comparison here of the original Final Fantasy VII intro and what they can do with today's technology. I think you're going to be pretty impressed.
Get down here, Merc.
So I was really pleasantly surprised to play this game. You know, I didn't want to get involved in watching any of the videos, like reviews on it and stuff, because I didn't want to be like expecting anything or, you know, not expecting anything going into this game. I just wanted to have my own experience playing it. And I've gotten, I think I've almost finished it actually. I'm probably almost done with the game now. But man, I gotta tell you, it's been a joy to play this game. You know, you get just what you want in a Final Fantasy game. You get excellent graphics, for the most part. You get excellent music. You know, they took all the old music from this game and they basically remastered the music. You know, it just sounds amazing. Sometimes they will actually add a lot of parts to like flesh out the story more, because, oh, I forgot to mention this. This game is not the whole game. This game, the remake, only covers like what's on this first disc. So I don't know what exactly they're gonna do in the future with this thing. I have kind of a bad feeling that they might not even make any more of the story. They might just cut it off here. I'm not sure, but you know, they didn't call this the remake part 1. They just call it the remake. So that makes me a little iffy. And honestly, you know, it took them like 3 years to make this game, at least, I'm sure. And what are they going to do with like the other 2/3 of the game is going to come out on the PS5 and the PS6? You know, I mean, what are they going to do? I have no idea. So we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. But hopefully, you know, this game will sell really well, and they'll finish up the story. I think that would be great. I would love to play the rest of the story, even on the PS5 with better graphics than this. I think that would be amazing. And they really kept it faithful to the old one. That's the thing I was most afraid about, and that's the thing I'm glad they didn't mess up with, because you know, so many people play this game and their hearts are really into it, and just seeing like them mess with the characters or make them, you know, act differently or something, I was really nervous. But even though they added a lot of content and put like extra, you know, story within the game where the characters are doing other things, they really kept it true. They kept it true to the original characters. Like, I never had a feeling where I'm seeing like something they remade and I'd be like, wait, no, Cloud would never say that or do that. What the hell? You know, I never got that feeling. I felt like they were actually keeping true to the original, which is good. You know, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but there's games now where they just shit on the old versions. You know, where they're trying to make money off the name of it, basically, but that's it. You know, they don't care about the original games. They just want to do their own thing, and there's no respect, you know. There's no respect for the old games. So I'm happy to say that Square Enix really did a good job with this one. I'm hoping that, you know, younger people today can play this version at least, and they'll kind of get that same magical feeling that I had when I was younger playing the original one. Honestly, like, if you're younger now and you didn't grow up with these graphics, you're probably going to be a little turned off by this. The graphics, you know, are really, I mean, for someone that's got nostalgia, I'd say they hold up. But maybe for someone that's like 15 now, they'd be like, ooh, that looks janky, you know? So I think that making a remake is just a perfect way to reintroduce everyone to this great game. And if you've never played a Final Fantasy game, you guys should definitely check it out. It's pretty cool. See you next time.
me one sec. I'll be done in a bit. Finally. So, after you left the village... I let you off the hook before, back at the hall, but not this time.
Well, when we were kids, everybody wanted to be a soldier, right?
Yeah, I remember they were on the news every day during the war.
Thing is, by the time I finally made it in, they didn't need heroes anymore. It was nothing like what we dreamt of. It was just working for Shinra. Just...
I'm sorry. I know it's a touchy subject.
Not exactly small talk. Especially with someone you haven't seen in a while.
I get it. Still, it's kind of funny. Us going our separate ways, thinking that must be it. That we'd never meet again. And then here, of all places, we do. You know what? We should totally celebrate. Let's dress up and hit the town.
Really?
I mean, why not? It'll be fun.
Do you even have fancy clothes?
Not like fancy, but I'll figure something out. What do you think would suit me, huh?
Something exotic?
Really? Then again, if we're making an effort, be sure to pick an outfit that goes with mine, okay?
Will do.
This is gonna be so much fun. You'll see.
Yeah. Maybe.
And on that happy note, I think it's time we headed back to the bar. Come on.
You don't need a break?
Honestly, I'm feeling pretty good. Marl isn't always right, you know. Grab a seat. What'll it be?
I don't know. Something hard and bitter.
Well, most people would say something sweet right about now.
I'm sure they would.
But you're a more discerning customer, aren't you? In which case... our house special, the Cosmo Canyon.
Beautiful.
I gotta go. Enjoy.